Hi, my name is Sarah Stein, and I am currently a graduate student in the Masters of Education program at San Francisco State University with an emphasis in early childhood care and education. And I'm currently about to enter into my last semester. And so I'm going to present to you within this video format an overview of my final project from EED 717 Narrative Inquiry, in which I took in the spring of 2022 and was at that time taught by Dr. Escamilla. So my goal is to walk you through my process for my final project, and in particular through the utilization of the lens of the CEAR Approach, which stands for Critical Ethnographic Action Research. And so I really wanted to explore the CEAR approach, and I chose to present my final project in a book format modeled after how the CEAR approach, the CEAR project, Professor Dr. Mario Lopez Gopar and his student teachers presented their own autoethnographies of their studies in Oaxaca, which is discussed in his article, Teaching English Critically to Mexican Children. In my final project, I attempted to take this concept and dig deeper and examine the value of exploring this narrative of integrating photography, journaling, original art, poetry, and short story writing to generate autobiographical writings through the lens of CEAR, the Critical Ethnographic Action Research. And the focal concept was believed that through starting with one's own critical reflection, my study would examine how one may re-investigate their own childhood or their early adulthood memories, as it may serve as a springboard to create autobiographies to affirm my teacher's identity. And by doing so, one might be better grounded to acknowledge, understand, and honor the lived experiences of their future students, colleagues, and family communities. So the title of my project is Acts of Identity, Origin, Loss, Kinship, and I intentionally use the word act in my title with the idea of kind of a double entendre, that an act as in take action, social action, and as an act of a play, because the play is one's life. So I gathered, and by using prior assignments from the 717 class, I used that as kind of a springboard, and I chose themes in which my narrative writings continue to return to, and ones in which, as an educator, you can find depth and connections to students, colleagues, and community members. And so I landed on the notions of family and origin, death, loss, and kinship. And these were all themes in which I felt had meaning on a philosophical level, as well as one can find common threads. So the front page is a friend of mine's art, Scott Ewan's art, which is in my house. It's right here. And it's a landscape of the South in the United States, to represent my upbringing in rural Virginia. And it kind of is this concept of, I'm sure all of you kind of had this experience of when you're a child in the backseat of a car with your head kind of pressed up against the window, and the landscape is just passing you by in kind of a blur because your mind is somewhere else. And so opening up the next page of my project, I dedicated my final project to my daughters. They were and are my inspiration, with the idea of, right, when I re-entered the world of higher education, as a parent, I have this belief of, to role model for my children the value of education. I might be able to say education is important, but as a parent, if I also live that experience, it, gives validity to the value. And, I kind of role model the idea of concepts of around exploring paths that aren't necessarily the most comfortable. And I encourage getting out of your comfort zone. The next page, I gave an author background to give some context to who I am and the path in which brought myself to where I am now presently. And I included a photo of myself as a toddler, which is within the CEAR approach. Within that, it's a key component with accompanying your narrative and kind of personalizing your writing. Next, I added a table of content, which was an introduction of myself. The first writing, which is called Conversations with Aunt Manya. And within that, it's a subsection called Escape from Russia, 1922. And it was my retelling of stories that my great Aunt Manya Gass told to me. The next writing is Reflections on Loss, and it starts as a conversation between myself and my youngest daughter. And she has, so in each of the writings, I use appropriate documentation to go along with it, whether it's photographs of my family, the actual passport that everyone in my maternal side of my family has as kind of an artifact of when our family came to the United States. And then in regards to Reflection of Loss, this is a conversation between myself and my daughter, my youngest daughter, and I used her drawings that went with our conversation. And then that brought me to kind of recounting to her a memorial speech, a eulogy in which I spoke at a friend of mine's passing. The next writing is it's called One Story, Two Versions, and that's goes into the idea of kinship in the sense of like, you might be told a version of a story to kind of influence relationships between kinship and your family. But as adults, we can critically reflect upon those stories and, kind of understand that just because there's a narration of a story doesn't mean that the narrator is reliable. And then I included some poems that I wrote in this class. It's called 28 Reasons Why Haiku as a coup de faudreur, which is a didactic conversations and pedagogical exchanges. And again, double entendre, haiku, coup. And then I included 2 of my nature journals, the number 8 being springtime, and then 9 in my table of contents is percussion play. And then I end with a project reflection. So in regards to my introduction, there is, I discussed the process in which we had this identity text in my 717 class with 3 other of my master's colleagues. And this came about in the second half of the semester. We met with Dr. Escamilla once a week and shared our writings and kind of the trajectory of our final project, as well as we partnered up, meaning we split into 2 groups and we shared more intimately with each other in our writings, or at least in the process in which each of us were heading. And we were able to utilize each other as kind of sounding boards. And I think in particular, when one is writing using the voice of the narrative, there is a fine balance between professional and personal, which I believe represents kind of our profession as early childhood care providers and educators in general. I mean, not only Are we working very closely in an intimate environment and during vulnerable temporal planes with educating students? You're working very closely with family members and many whom this is their first time exploring the path of education, and as well as with your colleagues. I mean, especially not to mention over these past few years with COVID and layers of challenges in which has added to our already taxed profession. So to have these moments to connect with my writing partner with the project was extremely invaluable and probably one of my most meaningful experiences in this entire master's program in general. And as a side note, if there were to be like one adjustment that I'd recommend or to make one ask from this framework of the 717 narrative inquiry class, is that the course could be set up in a manner to support more peer work and interactions in a way that we had writing groups or shared cohorts that we could work with the entire time of the course. I think it may have scaffolded or helped with figuring out the process of balancing the dualities of how to straddle the blending of personal and professional components, and really be able to have a deeper connection with colleagues. So in conclusion, and I do write a reflection, a conclusion to my project, and my biggest takeaway was around the concept that, as Dr. Lopez Gopar explains in chapter 3 of his book, Decolonizing Primary English Language Teaching, we are inherently connected to and shaped by other people close to us. And this project lent an insight and overview of some of those themes from my own childhood and my young adult life, experiences that have influenced my trajectory as an educator. And I believe that many teachers enter the field of education not only to help, but to heal, and to heal society, to heal the younger version of yourself from experiences from your childhood, to help guide and support the youth towards an empowering future. And through the use of the CEAR approach, this process helped me renew my understanding and realign my foundational purposes as an early childhood educator, and has validated who I am and as to why I've chosen this path. So thank you.